It's v.h.s.x. What do you mean?
All right, everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're reacting and having a discussion about a video from theMrHeadache. And as you can see, he's over there in the little corner smiling for us. It's very nice. And is the 9.3.0 PTB that bad? Yes, yes, yes. Dead by Daylight. Now, I wanted to get into this topic, but everybody kind of beat me to the punch. So I wanted to hear more so on what other people are really talking about. Kind of give my thoughts on it as well. I've already read the patch notes for this PTB, and it's certainly a nightmare. And it kind of goes without saying that it's very terrible. I'm gonna let
basically nothing. Everything that was great
here give us an explanation for what we're getting for playing nice, right? Because you're supposed to be one hooking everyone. You can't kill a single survivor. You know, that's toxic. That's against the rules. So as you can imagine, which if you want to watch the original video, will be linked in the description, obviously. So you can listen to theMrHeadache here explain his thoughts on it, like what he thinks are the positives, you know, and then we're gonna also get into this portion, which is what I'm concerned with, which is the negatives that we're getting from these changes in the PTB. So let's go ahead and jump into it, obviously.
From the previous crossover version of this, where you had like the pop and the unique stuff that came with that, that has now been replaced with a little bit more blood points and bloodlust 1. Not only is bloodlust 1 basically useless, you also only get it for 15 seconds, which is not a long period of time. On top of that, to make things even worse, BHVR just kind of forgot that most characters break bloodlust upon using their power, and so
thank you, MrHeadache, for explaining that for us. Literally took less than a minute. That's one of the biggest issues that I personally have with the PTB changes being offered, because you are giga buffing the survivors with the back-to-back changes that only benefit them, forcing killer players to remove all strategy from anything that they do now, and in return you receive a 5% speed boost, which I'm not going to say haste because it's not haste. You get 5%, which is bloodlust 1, 5% movement speed that is immediately canceled by any character that has any power ever. So, of course, this is an answer to, oh, well, Blight can't use that. And like, okay, that's wonderful. But what about Skull Merchant, who decides to put a drone down in what, 15 seconds? What about Ghostface that 9 times out of 10, if you're hooking with Ghostface, you're most likely going to be cloaking once you're out of sight to try to go ahead and get into a better position. Maybe try to 99 somebody, whatever it is you want to do. You're going to lose your movement speed. You don't get to keep it. Trapper, if there's a window or a pallet or something nearby, oh, guess what? Your speed is gone. Your little measly 5% is now gone, because that is somehow compensation for being unable to complete your objective in an efficient manner just to have 5% movement speed. Sure, makes a lot of sense. Don't get it, don't understand it. That's behavior's logic for you, because unfortunately they have literally zero nuance and zero understanding on how the game functions, and they come up with these ridiculous brain dead changes that absolutely provide nothing for the side that they're so adamantly against.
some way, shape, or form. Now, it's not nearly as black and white as people have made it out to be. Some characters, like Xenomorph, for example, actually can get some value out of this, because Xenomorph doesn't break bloodlust unless they use a tail tech or they exit a control station, so they are allowed to get into a control station and still keep the bloodlust. However, other characters like Trap or Ghostface, the ones that arguably need it the most, are breaking it whenever they enter a shroud, whenever they put down a trap, and basically not getting any value of this at all.
Thank you, MrHeadache, for bringing that up as well. And I think that is abundantly clear. Obviously, anybody who's even thought about these changes for a second, really pretty much that immediately comes to mind. I'm, of course, a Ghostface main, and you guys know full well that it is certainly a bit of a nightmare playing the character when you're kind of needing help and removing this form of strategy in the first place. Removing every other form of strategy in the first place basically makes these characters unplayable, and you're just going to go on, like, you're going to have the hardest matches. I'm not going to say you're going to lose every single game, but I do imagine a lot of people are going to struggle very, very much so because I understand that a vast majority of players who are on Ghostface, as an example, are not myself, or are not Shrouded Ghostface, or not SK, or whoever you can think of that have mastered this character to this extent. So therefore, it's going to be double, if not triple, as difficult than it probably would be for people such as those. So you can imagine that, which is the bigger glaring issue with these changes that are coming in with the PTB, the changes that they keep on trying to offer, is that these changes do absolutely nothing to bridge the gap between the S tiers and the F tiers. And Ghostface and Trapper being two examples of that, they are still unfortunately unaffected. Even within the previous attempt at the PTB was the same exact thing. The changes did absolutely nothing to bridge the gap. It was inconsequential. It did absolutely nothing for those characters, because having a like arguably the previous PTB bonuses were better. But unfortunately, because the poisoned well that behavior is kind of pulling from, because obviously there's not enough killer players to be able to talk about it. They don't listen to enough killer players. And then there's also survivor mains that can pose as killer players by claiming that they play killer when they never do, and disingenuously will then claim that, oh yeah, they don't need those bonuses at all, poisoning the well that behavior is already trying to pull from, which we already know that behavior is oblivious to any sort of nuance, to an extreme fault at this point, that they're going to believe that feedback instead of actually looking at the actual people that they should be listening to. And that's why I always believe that bigger content creators at least have a better chance of offering more feedback and better feedback than it would be just the randoms on DVD Twitter.
It feels like, once again, behavior did not think this out, because who realistically is going to benefit from this the most? C and D tier killers. Guess who has a lot of ways to immediately break bloodlust? These characters. Isn't that neat? I feel like this was just very like black and white thinking of like, hey, most S tier killers are movement characters, so they're immediately using their power after hooking. So clearly we've done the good thing by making it cancel bloodlust, right? No, it just affects everybody pervasively down the line. So cool. And in true behavior fashion, the base kit buffs given to survivors are quite the opposite. They are far too much, even in their current form, that has been taken down a lot from the crossover version of this. I forecasted correctly when I made my dev update video that the anti-tunnel changes would be used more aggressively than they were previously, and I was absolutely right. Today, I had it being used more aggressively than I had ever seen it being used. You may be questioning, why is that? Because survivors get a whopping 30 seconds of haste and endurance off hook, as long as they don't commit a conspicuous action.
I just want to point out something real quick, because I completely agree with where MrHeadache's at. But if you're watching the gameplay at the top right of the screen, which might be a little bit hard to see from this perspective, you can have a better view when you're watching the video on your own. But I want to point out that recalling your axe on Springtrap removes the bloodlust as well. So if you decide to, say, just recall it for some reason, I mean, whatever the reason may be, right? Say you want to put it somewhere else, you don't have it anymore. That's gone too. Just a small action like recalling your axe, which makes you slower anyway, so you kind of would want to have a little more movement speed. That also gets removed as well. I don't play enough Springtrap, so I'm not an expert to say, hey, that's like going to be extremely impactful or not, but I do say that it's still a bad thing. And obviously, to add on to what MrHeadache is saying, as we imagine, the anti-tunneling and camping and all this type of stuff is going to then be used aggressively, which is what behavior claims that they were trying to prevent. They were claiming that it was like they were trying to move past that, but yet, as you can imagine, they don't actually have anything in place for preventing those things from being used aggressively. They really should be using it aggressively. Should not be, I should say. There should be a ways for there to be preventions for that. So for example, right, like if they decide to stay within the tear radius within 5 seconds or so, maybe you can make it like if they start chase or something of that nature, like have the duration of the endurance reduced faster or something like that. Like there's got to be something in place to where if they decide to try to body block with it, or try to get within your tear radius for too long or something like that, it's automatically removed and then they're forced to get downed again or something of that nature, because there's got to be something so that they can use it intentionally the way it's supposed to be used without it forcing the killers to play differently, because most of the time they're not trying to tunnel anybody. They're trying to go for the person who saved, and then they just can't because the person who decided to body block with their 30,000 year endurance is in the way now, right? So what is the answer to that? I'm not a game developer, so I can't really give exact pinpoint ideas without possibly breaking the game at this point. But obviously, I would say there's got to be something that has to do with proximity of the killer. Like if you're near the killer for longer than a certain, like, it has to be a short amount of time because they can still exploit it either way. So it's got to be something like they stay within the range of the killer, and then it decreases a lot faster. Like the endurance drops from like 10 to 3 seconds or something crazy, like something like strong enough to where they're like, yo, I don't want to be near this guy on purpose. Like I'm trying to leave so I can keep the thing. You know what I mean? That to me would make a lot more sense logically, so you can prevent the actual aggressive use of these second chances anyway.
30 seconds of endurance and haste off hook, and that's in tandem with the new elusive status effect. Once again, just like with the previous changes, there was just a lot that behavior did not take into account when putting through these changes. Hovering for saves or for sabos has never been stronger, as survivors that have the post-hook buffs can use them to hover better because they can use elusive to not see the scratch marks, to not be seen, to not be heard. And then even if they get caught out, they still have the haste, they still have the endurance, so it doesn't really matter that much. Sabos are much the same way, because until you actually touch the hook to begin the saboing, you can kind of play chicken with the killer all you want with your elusive, with your endurance, with your haste.
This is extremely, I would have to say, like, accurate, to be honest. Like, theMrHeadache pretty much nailed it. I would say that's exactly what the issue is with the changes. They can still use it aggressively. They can still sit there and have 30 seconds of faster movement speed, and they're invincible basically for that duration, because you hit them and then they can still speed off, so then they'll make the next 3,000 pallets that they decided to add to the maps. They're still invincible. It's still invincible. Like, they still are going to just be in the way. They're still just going to be able to do that. Swifts, of course, are going to be able to use that, especially coordination. It still does nothing. Like, that's the biggest issue that I'm having. As much as you want to baby the low level players and stuff like that, the problem is that you're not taking into account the nuance or even understanding how the new players even get there. And one of the bigger issues that the new players are facing is the fact that they don't know how the game works probably because of the tutorial. Now, I do imagine that not everybody's going to use the tutorial, but I do imagine that at least it might give some people a chance to learn if they decide to do so.
You may be thinking, well, the right answer for killer usually in those situations is to slug out the survivors if they're all hovering for saves or hooks. But that's right, we put in base kit unbreakable, so that's pretty cool. Initially, this wouldn't be an issue. Sorry, I gotta ban somebody being stupid in somebody's chat. Initially, this would not be an issue because it is a full 2-minute timer before they can get back up and have that base kit unbreakable, but it increases by 33% for every person that's on the ground.
So as I mentioned before, I spoke about this in a JC Glitchmaster video that I was covering, had literally talked about that exact problem. The second you start adding base kit unbreakable, it completely removes slugging as an entire strategy to build pressure, because and as you're hearing with the system, the more people that are on the ground, the faster they rise. So at that point, you really have no reason to even try to pick up the person if they can just pick themselves up, therefore making the gens even more efficient when you are facing people that are experienced and understand that. It's still going to cause the problem. I've spoke about this many times. It's just not solve the issue. It does not help the problem. Adding base kit unbreakable is not the answer. It is not the answer. It really isn't. And speeding them up on the ground is not going to help out either. Like, you don't need ways for them to just be able to not have any form of pressure when the killer is trying to have a play. That's just how it works, unfortunately. Because like I've stated before, the main way to build pressure is to get them off of the objective. That is the point of even doing a strategy in the first place. And it's not like there's a base kick grim embrace or anything that's going to stop the gens for more than 10 seconds, because 10 seconds is really low. I would argue make it 20 or 30. Make it like long enough so that they can get off of the gens, so that it'll be less so of the slugging, right? But then the problem is, if you add that, more crying comes, and then that'll never get added. But then they'll add triple the speed for unbreakables, and they can infinitely unbreakable, and you don't have to ever pick yourself up, and gens will complete themselves and all this type of stuff. So it's like, what are they doing?
Which is what's going to happen if there's multiple people around going for saves or sabos. A lot of people are going to end up on the ground. So bully squads, who have an infamous reputation for already being extremely annoying and frustrating to play against in DBD, are going to be even stronger now, because a lot of these base kit changes make it easier for you to do those things.
And there it is. That's another point that I had to agree with theMrHeadache here, is the fact that the bully squads get buff Swifts, and pretty much the same exact thing at this point. Swift and the bully squads are receiving buffs from that, because if it's a Sabo squad, now they can just do that infinitely, basically. They can just do that infinitely now, because with that free pickup speed, you need to leave them on the ground because there's no hook available. It's like, what are you supposed to do? And let's not even talk about Breakdown getting a buff. They decided to reduce the duration of the hook being destroyed to 90 seconds instead of 120. But then they made it so that they heal even faster while unhooked. So they just giga buff healing speed. Great. For some reason. Wicked gives you an additional 50%, I think, like self-heal. You can pair it with Resurgence, and now you have yourself a insta-heal off of hook. Which I'm going to go ahead and include the clip from Coconut RTS.
It's kind of busted. Yeah, do it. Yeah, come on. Yo, okay.
And
no way, you actually fully heal?
There you go. There you go. Yup. You're welcome. You're welcome. Because Behavior thought it was hilarious to buff healing even more than it already has been. Because we need Wicked and Resurgence to stack now. You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad that we all got to enjoy that. You're welcome.
Thing that these changes cause is the exact same thing that we warned and hated about the initial changes that were going to come through with the crossover version of this update. And that being that while this update is meant to target hard sluggers, hard tunnelers, people playing super sweaty, it's actually constantly shaming and pigeonholing everybody who plays killer, not just the people that play super intensely. This, regardless of what strategies that you use, will affect you 9 times out of 10 in most of your matches. I had plenty of situations today where I wasn't tunneling, wasn't excessively slugging, and I had to play around these new changes. There was one situation where I brought Hex Rune into a game, and this Yui had brought the Wicked Resurgence combo, but we'll get to that because that's also stupid. So she had hopped out of the basement and was going straight towards my totem that was near Shack, and I kind of had to play this weird game of chicken with her because I had to see if she would touch the totem to get rid of her conspicuous action and, you know, actually not have 5 layers of defense. But she realized that that was the case, so she just kind of like hovered near the totem but didn't actually go do it. So I had to play this game of like basketball. We were like waving our hands over her like, no, don't touch my ruin. And then I did eventually decide, okay, I'm spending too much time here trying to wave her off of my totem, so I guess I'll go chase her. And then she called out the totem to somebody else, and they came in and cracked it. So
and there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There you have it. The same exact issues that the original PTB had are now still in the next PTB that they supposedly tried to add. And I find it extremely like mind-boggling that there's still individuals that truly believe in their minds that these changes are so good and they need to be in the game. We need to have anti-tunnel, we need to have anti-camp, and we need to have anti-slug. And it's like, for what exactly? Like, for what exactly? When they can just abuse these systems in place, there's no compensation for killer. It doesn't bridge the gap. between the low and high tiers. It doesn't help anyone. Like what are we doing here? What are we doing here? There are people that are not even trying to play sweaty. Ots is an example. MrHeadache, an example, who even previously had stated like when that they were also having to deal with the gen lockout because of the fact that they just could not find anybody else, or for whatever reason, or trying to play in the nice way, and still ended up eating the gen block because there's literally either no one else to chase, or the person who knows how the system works is going to get in the way all day long, and they can't really chase anybody else, and there's a person body blocking every 2 seconds. What are you supposed to do in response to that? That has always been my biggest question when talking about these god-awful changes and the god-awful PTBs. What in response are we supposed to do when these strategies are being used strategically to try to build pressure on characters that do not have the capability to travel fast or down people quickly? It's just not possible. And that is just applicable to anybody across the board in MMR. Like, you can have a mastery with a lot of characters, but I'm speaking for casual players that are trying to load up a low tier, or casual players that just enjoy a character like Ghostface or something like that. I'm trying to speak for those people that just don't want to take the game so unbelievably seriously just so that they can have a fighting chance. So that I find is kind of insane. Like, I do understand, like, Killer is literally like the most skilled side you could possibly play between the two. Like, it has so much depth because every single killer is very different. And it's like, what the heck, man? Like, it's already difficult as it is to know how your power works. Then you gotta also try to maneuver around all these like other second chance perks and base kit this and base kit that. And then now you gotta maneuver again because now, like, you gotta deal with this now. It's kind of insane. It is kind of insane. But that's the end of the video for you guys. If you want to watch the rest of the video for both of the videos included in this, both links are in the description. You can go ahead and watch them there. But let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments section. Consider joining the community in Discord. Make sure you accept the rules with the knife emoji. Or you can become a member and supporting the channel. It's literally $1. You get all the perks pretty much of like all the content and whatnot. But all my members who are in the higher tiers get their name right off at the end of every video. So stay tuned for that. I'll see you guys in the next one. Well, I wanted to go ahead and take some time out to thank all my members from Patreon with Crow King 101, my YouTube members, Majora Jeff, Endire, Evil Peachy YT, Zero Mocker, Christian, HexDev, and Crow Vader, and for my Twitch subscribers, Cake is the Road, Danica 2002, Final Girl _Bunny, Acklefin, Chili Cinderace, Zero Mocker, Ginsburg, Johns 117 _ Lovely Ghost TTV, Jar TTV, Zazaboo, and Crow Vader. Just wanted to thank you guys. And if you also want to have your name read off at the end of every video, make sure you join on one of these platforms to get one of those perks as well as the other perks you get. So appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much.